as we record 10 years ago, Steam's beta went public on Linux. It's been 10 years, boys.
Congratulations, everyone.
November 6, 2012. The initial beta was limited to just select participants. They wanted to work out early bugs. And then they announced they'd be releasing it to the wider public later as more Source Engine games became available. And they based the original Steam stuff on Ubuntu 12.04, 12.10.
That's what I'm still running on.
And now, with the Steam Deck out there, things are looking pretty good. Steam on Linux was at a pretty healthy 1.28%, which is, 1% sounds small, but when you consider the massive base of Steam and how it's always growing, that's almost, 1.3%. That's pretty decent. Mac's only at 2.23%. So we're sniffing at the bottom of the Mac heel right now. And as the deck sells, there'll be more and more soon. That's pretty nice to see. You look at where Valve's at now with Linux. It seems like we're in a pretty good position for that market share number just to get bigger and bigger.
Yeah, right. It's getting great. I think it's only getting better.
Hello, friends, and welcome back to your weekly Linux talk show. My name is Chris.
My name is Wes.
And my name is Brent.
You're back.
Hey.
Welcome. Thank you for having us again.
The boys are back in town this week, and we're surprising each other with 3 unknown topics. So I can't tell you what we're going to talk about because I don't know. What I do know is that I've got a big update on my ODROID H3 Plus.
Finally.
Really looking forward to telling you about that. And I know we'll round out the show with some great boosts and picks and a lot more. So before we go any further, let's give a shout out to that virtual lug. Time appropriate greetings, Mumble Room.
Hello, Chris.
Guys. Hello.
Hey, Wes, and hello, Brent.
Hello.
Hello, and hello everybody up there in quiet listening. We got a big crowd up there.
They're being very quiet today.
That's the nature of the...
But are they listening?
I hope so, because I'd like them to go over and say good morning to Tailscale. Head over to tailscale.com. It's a mesh VPN powered by WireGuard. We love it. I used the heck out of it recently. I just got to go into my most recent Home Assistant installation as well. It's a powerful mesh VPN product. Go say good morning to our friends over at Tailscale and use it for free up to 20 devices at tailscale.com. Tell me Unplugged program sent you. All right, so before we get into the show today, we got to sort this out.
Uh-oh.
We got some geocache drama. And I don't know if Brent just has selective memory holing or if I'm confusing locations and names again, but one of us is right and one of us is wrong, and we've got to settle it now before we go any further. So you put it in the doc, so I'll let you start, Brent.
Sure thing. Jared wrote in with a little note that made me wonder if our geocache at Folsom might be a flop. Jared writes, I stopped by the Folsom geocache with my kids and spent over an hour looking and digging around without success. Just a note, we didn't bury any of them. Apparently that's a faux pas in the geocache world. Jared continues, I met another fellow listener who happened to be looking for it too, which was a bonus.
Okay, that's amazing.
Isn't that great? So that got me thinking, how many people are looking for this stuff? I really want to know. We love hearing that. So please, if you went looking and didn't find, don't be disappointed. Leave us a note. We'd love to hear it.
Or stash another one. If it's missing, hide one. I don't know.
Well, that's actually a great idea.
I don't know how you'd market like a JB community one. Maybe you put a note in there or something, or a thumb drive with some JB shows.
Maybe we could send them some stickers.
We put in a t-shirt that we were hoping that was going to work. Jared continued, at this point, I think it's either 1, found by someone else as the area does get frequent traffic, or 2, it's so well hidden that we need another clue besides Chris's burnt trees.
Listen, now, come on. Why are you coming at me? Why are you coming at me with that?
You hid the cache. I was there in person, but I had no idea where you hid it. You had to tell me. And I looked for a little bit and had a hard time. So I think that's part of the balance, isn't it? It's balancing not having just random people find it because we want our JB fans to find it, but also so it needs to be hidden well enough that not just a random person finds it.
And the excuses come out.
You see how he's attacking my hiding styles here? He's attacking me.
I had this exact same challenge on the other geocaches.
Oh, no, I know what's going on here. You see, here's what happened is I got a personally good, reasonable spot to hide it. And then Brent couldn't find it. So he's got it all in his head that I made it super hard. But you know why? Here's why he can't find it. Here's why Jared couldn't find it. I believe this was found almost immediately.
Oh, really?
I have a clear recollection on one of our shows, and I think it was the peak of our travel, so we don't remember it. But I remember in one of our shows, this was the first one that got found, was the Folsom one.
No, I disagree. I think it's the one that Wes planted in that tree that got found first.
Mine was definitely found.
Okay. All right. That might be true, but I swear I remember talking about the Folsom one being found. So we need someone else to go on location. Okay.
Did we even ever hide one there? At this point, I'm beginning to question it. I've heard a lot of stories, but
I think we need either trackers in these things or something so we could tell if they've been moved. But actually, I think one thing that might help is maybe we need a central place to like collect all the geocaches and the status of them, whether they've been found, not found, etc. So actually, Takeoff 751 on our GitHub suggested that we implement such a system. So I am going to put out a pledge. Here you go. You ready for this?
oh.
So by next Linux Unplugged, that's in 7 days, we will have a geocaching tracking system in place. Now, it might not be fancy. We've talked about in that issue some really fancy ways of doing it, but we'll at least have something. And I will go back and try to figure out which ones have been found, which ones haven't, and I'll collect all of the, coordinates and everything in a nice, easy to find place.
There you go. I believe the Folsom one has been found. I will give a little bit more context because I'm looking at the video I took of it right now. And what I would say is you go down the trail to the shore where there's a river, no, it's a lake or whatever. And there is some burnt logs pretty much right off to the right-hand side when you're walking down there. And those burnt logs, under one of them, here, I'll show it to you too, Wes. Maybe you can think of a way to describe this. But so here, to grab the phone, you can see that's the video right there. How would you describe that spot? It's just kind of down on the shore under some burnt logs. I mean, there's nothing.
They're not especially burnt from this picture, just kind of some regular logs. At the time there was a bunch of leaves.
That's
I don't know,
the one clue I give is burnt logs and youth.
Maybe the area is kind of previously burnt.
I'm agreeing with Chris. In person, it's clear that area, someone, I don't know, threw down a cigarette and got burnt, and everything else is super lush and green. So I think the burnt part is actually a great tip because it's the only area around there that sort of looks like that. And Chris, when you had me in person try to find it just based on this was the first one we dropped. So he was like, okay, now try to find it. I had a hard time because I didn't have any hints, but I think that hint is actually a really great one. Now, that leads me to believe, I think someone else grabbed it. That's my conclusion.
You could see, if you're walking by it, you could see the blue. I can't show it on camera, but you could see the blue of the lid walking by. It's actually visible just walking by it. It's not like it's...
I like that you put a little bit of leaves over it, though.
It's a little
just
hidden.
Like little.
Yeah, but...
wasn't the lid red?
It looks blue in the picture.
Uh-oh.
Brent, get it together.
How burnt was it?
All right. So you can come at me with my hiding styles or what lids I use, but the reality is I think it was one of the first ones found. So therefore, one of the most successful. Wes is being thus most successful.
At least by one measure.
But anyways, we should do more of these because clearly there's not enough. That's amazing that the two different listeners at the same time are out there.
Yeah.
Better get out there while the weather's still good.
And Jared finishes, we had fun looking for it nonetheless. And my daughter implored me to get out there sooner the next time we have another geocache to find. So thank you for putting it out there. It was great meeting everyone at the Sacramento meetup and having this fun little activity along with it.
Yeah, you know what? It makes me just want to travel again a little bit, which is good. I thought maybe my travel bone would be broken. Although I have to say with the weather what it is, I'm looking forward to just hunkering down for a bit. And I got plenty of projects to work on.
Oh, yes, you do.
And the biggest for me personally, although probably not for the whole family, is my new home server to replace my dead Raspberry Pi server.
Rest in peace, little buddy.
Yeah. Its time came too soon. However, the timing could not have been more perfect. I was pretty bummed when the server died because my home assistant setup was very complex. I got like a lot of devices and it was responsible for a lot of the automation. But then additionally, like we just talked about on the pre-show, I like having my media locally because I'm often on a mobile connection.
Yeah.
And so I also had it serving up local media. I have it doing all of our documentation in Markdown. I had it running our DNS. I had it running all kinds of things like smoke ping and sync thing and
The heart of the
duplicati.
RV.
And it died. When I was down in Pasadena for the JPL tour, it was back up in Sacramento dying, and I didn't even know it. But the timing was like unbelievable because when I arrived home from our road trip, my Home Assistant Yellow was sitting on the porch. It's just
Amazing.
after a year. Like I crowdfunded that thing like a year ago. It shows up, and so I get my Home Assistant setup going, and it's rocking. I talked about that and self-hosted recently. Then, right around the same time, hard kernel folks announced the ODROID H3 and the H3 Plus, which is an x86-based Raspberry Pi alternative. It starts around $165 for the Plus.
So a little spendier, but
Yeah.
x86.
And you get a quad-core Jasper Lake processor, which goes up to 3.3 gigahertz, 4 cores. It goes up to 64 gigabytes of dual-channel DDR4 RAM. It has an NVMe slot. It has dual 2.5 gigabit NICs.
Oh.
I've mentioned it before on the show. It's like it was the perfect solution at the moment that my system had died. And I was waiting. I knew I needed to redo part of my setup anyways because I had some Home Assistant issues. But I just didn't want to go through all the hassle without also getting a performance upgrade. And then this stuff and not only did this get announced, but they actually shipped it on time.
You have it.
I have it. And so I've been running it in production over the last week or so. I really banged on it pretty much all weekend. This is like what I focused on the most when it was raining. And I am going to give it a hearty endorsement. I give this one the LUP seal of approval. If you're looking for a low-power device, when this thing's running idle, just kind of, and I would define idle as your services are loaded, but nothing's really being taxed, 1.5 watts.
Wow.
For an x86 box. I can run any x86 application I want. It's got a modern Intel processor with QuickSync. I've got super fast storage. 1.5 watts.
That seems amazing and impossible, but how does it compare to ARM stuff? It must be in the same area.
It's around there.
That is crazy.
Where it can go up a little higher, I think, depending on your load.
Yeah, what you're doing with it.
Yeah, I haven't really seen a lot of that.
How does it feel to be back on x86? I feel like another way to spin this little segment is Chris abandons ARM.
Well, I don't know about abandoning ARM forever, but I am done with the Raspberry Pi. No way. Not compared to this. This blows it away.
Wow.
I'm done with the Pi. Seriously.
I never thought this day would happen.
Are you feeling okay?
It's the storage, it's the CPU, it's the 2 SATA ports. So I also picked up a 4 terabyte SATA disk from Amazon for like a ridiculously great price. And I hooked it up over SATA, and now I've gone from USB storage to actual SATA storage. And the only thing I'm not really satisfied so far with the ODROID would be the cases. They're kind of clunky, they're kind of rough. They're a good price, but if anybody knows the better cases, I would definitely be interested.
Have you had a chance to play with the dual NICs yet? Because I'm real curious about that.
No, I'm only using one. I don't actually need dual in this, but not buying Raspberry Pis anymore. So like when I do eventually get this firewall set, when we get a firewall set up here at the studio, I'm going to go with one of these. I'm done with the Raspberry Pi. I'll find something to do with a few of them I have left, I guess, but it's just so much better.
Melt them down in a sort of ceremonial.
No, I mean, I'll use them for something, but I don't know, maybe mine Monero.
I've got another question for you. I noticed there's a massive fan on that case, which in one way is probably good because it's quieter. I'm curious, have you had a sense of the heat output on that thing?
I'm not pushing it a lot. So I've been checking it, and now I'm also monitoring the booth, because it's in the booth. And the temperatures are all totally normal, so I don't have a fan on mine. The case does have room for a fan. It does not come with a fan. But they sell a series of accessories for this thing, including a fan. If you want to run it with a SATA disk, make sure you get a power cable because you're going to need that. It doesn't, It doesn't come with that. But one of the things that's made this real great, got to give a shout out to Nix.
Oh.
Never saw that coming.
So what I did before I decided to deploy this thing is I took my Dev 1 because I was going to nuke and pave it to put Fedora on there anyways for testing. So before I did that last week, I did a minimal Nix install and started configuring it like I was going to set up the ODROID on my Dev 1 laptop.
Yeah.
So I got Jellyfin set up. I got my storage mounted where I wanted it with everything in the right file systems and all that. Got all this stuff kind of preloaded and configured. Figured out what I didn't like. Fixed a few things.
Got some tweaks going.
Yeah. And then when all the parts arrived for the ODROID, which is really, I was waiting on cabling, I just sat down and I decided to do a GUI install because I'm lazy. And also, I just wanted to get the ODROID all the way up to a GUI again, right? So make sure everything was there, test the networking, test everything. And so I went and I grabbed the NixOS GNOME installer and ran that, did a live session, made sure everything was working, made sure I could see the storage, everything was good because I brought the disks with me. I had them attached to the Dev 1 over USB, but on the ODROID, I connected them over SATA. But it all still worked.
No problem.
It was still Dev SDA on both of them.
Perfect.
So I get everything going, launch the installer, and I choose the minimal install option, which is fantastic. So when it's all done, it reboots into a headless setup, essentially, and real minimal config. And so then I just SSH in, drop my config that I kind of built over a week on the Dev 1 onto the ODROID, do the old Nix config rebuild. And within 15 minutes, I mean, maybe not even that. The thing was crazy fast, and it's a pretty minimal install. I rebooted, and I had everything.
And you're done.
And everything worked. It was incredible. And I opted to use containers for a couple of things instead of using the Nix package manager, mostly for my media stuff. So SyncThing, Jellyfin, that's all via container. But then things like NetData and Duplicati and all of the command line tools, that's all installed via the Nix system. I'm thinking this is going to be a really solid long-term install because I have rollback capabilities with Nix now, and it's a pretty minimal base install and config, and it's all just defined in that config file.
Easy to back up.
I already have it backed up.
Yeah.
And so I think I can just keep that base system rolling, and I'll just update the application containers that I run in containers over time. And I think with the performance of the ODROID,
you're not going to be super taxing this box all the time, right? So it can just kind of sit there, hum along, do what you need it to.
I think I'm going to get
you got
used to
QuickSync,
years.
as you said, so it's not even going to have to be too hassled there.
Years, Wes. Years. I'm going to get years of use out of this.
Wait, but then what are you going to do if you're not constantly rebuilding your home server?
I'm going to be buying more of these things and putting them in all kinds of places. I mean, I ended up with 4 Raspberry Pis over time. This is they hit it out of the park. The 1.5 watts at idle matters a lot because there are long stretches of time where I'm running off solar. And so anything that runs consistently matters, even if it's just a couple of watts over a 24-hour period of time or a week, that really adds up.
Okay. Do you think you could do a show off on a phone?
I was wondering. Definitely if at a PCI slot. Definitely.
Yeah.
But the disk I/O is really fast. Maybe. It would depend on the CPU and all that, but maybe. I've thought about it. Could these be used as a desktop?
Swap out the studio. We got to replace these studio rigs.
That's actually what I was thinking is the Reaper machine.
Oh, man.
I was thinking because it'd be silent.
Right. Tiny little thing. More space below here for
Cheap.
fun snacks.
Cheap.
Right.
I love how your thoughts, 2 weeks ago was to put a Thaleo in place? And now you're talking about putting this note right there.
No, the Thaleo's the Thaleo is for the OBS machine. That's
sorry.
We might get that ordered tomorrow morning. But for the Reaper machine, that's a different set of requirements. It might work. Yeah, I'm very, very impressed. And I've done 2 separate orders. So I ordered the ODROID, and then I also had to order a cable pack and stuff. Both shipments were just, not as quick as Amazon, but within a few days they arrived, no problem. No supply chain issue.
Feels good.
Yeah. I'm very,
that
very
matters
impressed.
when you need a replacement in a pinch or, the next piece for your next project.
So I'm going to get just things kind of dialed in on this thing now. I got Tailscale set up on it last night. And so that's going now. And I got a real kind of nice, clean, I really took everything I've kind of figured out over the last couple of years since I built the Raspberry Pi and applied it to this one. My first Raspberry Pi builds were Raspberry Pi OS.
Right.
And that just doesn't make for a good server OS.
What a world ago that was.
And then my second generation, which is what my Pi server was that died, my second generation of Raspberry Pi builds was all based on Ubuntu, I think 2004, their first LTS that officially supported the Pi. And I got to give Ubuntu credit. It worked really, really well. It did a very good job for what I needed. But there's a lot there. Compared to a minimal Nix install, there's so much more installed on that Ubuntu system and so many more services and like Snap stuff that I didn't want on the server.
Yeah, just a bunch of things you don't particularly care about. That might be nice on a more generic server, but not for what you're doing here.
And there was something really nice about getting a kind of like having a system to make mistakes on the Dev 1 and do things wrong a couple of times. Because like one of the things I did the first time is I tried to just do Jellyfin as just using Nix.
Yeah.
And one of the things I discovered is that presently, although they're working on it, but presently they have an older version of Jellyfin packaged in Nix. You think of it as a rolling distro, it's got everything brand new. But in this case, Jellyfin was actually out of date. And there are solutions to solve that on Nix. But then I also have to solve it for FFmpeg because I need a version of FFmpeg that works with Jellyfin. And then I also have to solve it for this plugin that I'm using that's based on a certain version of Jellyfin. And it kind of just started becoming like this rabbit hole of like fixing stuff to make it use the Nix system versus I could just go get the container that just had it all.
And obviously NixOS runs containers just fine.
Exactly. So that was sort of one of the things I realized on my test system was like, maybe I won't do it this way.
Yeah.
I could see it's nice not having to worry about containers and not worrying about any of that. But for these media applications, Plex 2, the creators of these containers have done things to optimize like hardware transcoding and stuff like that.
And you probably, a lot of these, like, you don't really want to look inside, right? You don't really care. Like, as long as it works and it pops up its web interface and like does the thing, you're not trying to go mess inside the container anyway.
Yeah, it's not like a core business tool. It's how I just want to watch something on my TV, and I just want to watch something on my TV. Damn it, you know.
Now, when it goes down, it suddenly becomes a core business tool, but you know.
Yeah, right. No kidding. At least for me. But you know, so I made those mistakes, fixed them, and the beautiful thing is, and then I'm all done on this. But the thing I just effing love about Nix is the moment I realized, this is probably better as a container. I just went and commented out the stuff I added to the Nix config, rebuilt, and it was like I never installed Jellyfin. It was like it was never there. It was a totally clean system again.
That's so nice.
It's so nice. And then I just went and got the container and was like, never did that. Nothing. You know, just pretend like I never made that mistake.
That you can just have access to this giant array of software that you can just sort of arbitrarily compose together into different systems whenever you want in different ways.
Whichever one works better for me, too.
Yeah.
It's such a great platform in that regard. And you just have to invest the time in educating yourself to figure out which one works right. And sometimes you just have to do it the hard way like I did. Try it one way. But I love that. And then the thing that makes it so great is I just pick that config file up, drop it on the new rig, rebuild, off to the races and done. So it was a real success, and getting the ODROID up and going, combined with the compatibility of x86, but the power usage of like a traditional ARM system, really hitting the sweet spot for me.
Hey, good job x86, I guess, too, huh? That's impressive.
Linode.com/unplugged. That's where you go to get $100 in 60-day credit for a new account, and it's a great way to support the show while you're checking out something pretty great, i.e. Linode. Linode is easy to use and powerful cloud hosting. They have 11 data centers around the world, soon to be like another dozen over the next year. But really, I think the key thing is that a really solid Linux infrastructure. They make it super quick to deploy systems, and you get to choose from a very wide range of Linux distributions, pretty much all the great distros, and there's even guides on how to build it up from the ground up. We've done that a couple of times for various reasons. They now also offer bare metal servers, and we use the absolute snot out of their S3 compatible object storage. That's what's behind our PeerTube instance. That's what's behind our Nextcloud instance for our team here. It's just kind of like our go-to solution for anything that's going to sort of have a various amount of data. I don't want to like slice off disks like an old caveman or something. They have brilliant VLAN support where you can actually bridge different Linode data centers together. A powerful DNS manager. They support Kubernetes, Ansible, and Terraform if you're using that tooling. Super fast networking because they are their own ISP. And their pricing is 30 to 50% cheaper than the other major cloud providers out there. And they're a true, genuine Linux-loving company. They started because they saw what you could do with VMs and Linux before there ever was an AWS or cloud hosting, as we call it. And because of that, they built a company around the merits of the product, the capabilities, the speed, the features, the reliability, and the support. They have 365, 24/7 support by phone, top-tier support when you call them. Additionally, they have tons of resources on their website. Just a couple of days ago, they posted a how to revert your last Git commit tutorial. This is really just a tutorial to get you going on Git. We talk about it all the time here, but what about some practical examples? How do you actually roll things back when you make a mistake? They've got an absolutely free tutorial. It's really nothing Linode specific about it. It's just about getting you those skills, and then I think they hope something you'll be able to use on Linode. Get even more out of Linode, I would imagine. Lots of great tutorials. I'll put a link to this one, how to revert your last Git commit. What a great guide. I'll put a link to that in the show notes. I love that kind of stuff about Linode. Great online resources, great technical resources in the company, and a website that I've noticed everyone on our team at various skill levels can use to manage the systems. It's really fantastic. And their community support runs super deep as well. So go get that $100 and support the show. You go to linode.com/unplugged. That's linode.com/unplugged. We do have some housekeeping to get to this week. I think number one, we got to talk about. I promised to try to bring it up earlier, and I'm already sliding on that. The Tuxies are coming up, so we're getting serious about this year's Tuxies, and we're looking for people to help us maybe organize it, work on the submissions, get the questions in better shape. I have launched a Tuxies boardroom.
Put your tuxes on, folks.
Yeah, get your bests on and come join us. We'll have a link in the show notes if you'd like to join us in Matrix and help us organize this. Or you can go to bit.ly/Tuxiesboard, and that'll take you there. Tuxiesboard.
Who doesn't want to go there?
And we'd love to have you join us in there and help make the Tuxies the best awards ever. It's the #1 award show.
I mean, we have,
Linux.
Out there's a lot of really great projects, and we want help trying to honor them.
Yeah, is that Nextcloud instance? It's still up, right?
Yep. I got us started with the little blank entry. We can start crafting one.
Yeah, so if we could find, we could work on it. Perhaps somebody feels like they'd do a better job.
Yeah.
Definitely possible. We're already sliding. Then we could give them access to the Nextcloud instance, and that's where we have the form that gets composed over there. And if you have ideas on things that we didn't get in the Tuxies last year that should be in the Tuxies, you can boost them into the show, or you can join that Matrix chat room and let us know as well. Now, there is an event going on, kicks off tomorrow as we record, and it runs through the 9th. It's something that we haven't said for a long time. It's been gone. It's been missing from the community calendar, and it is the Ubuntu Summit 2022. It's back, and Brent wanted to get you all, I guess, up to date on it, I guess? You can't go.
I noticed that there's registration for kind of tuning in remotely. I don't think all of the talks are being streamed, but I think the main room is being streamed. So they have a bunch of tracks, including the Ubuntu desktop, of course, which seems obvious, but some community tracks and data science, app ecosystems, infrastructure, devices, and content and design, which is, close to my heart. And so I just thought, the people should know this is happening. Yeah. I know you can go ahead and register right now for some remote viewing stuff. I wasn't able to find a link right away to where it's going to be streamed, but I'm sure they've got that all figured out, and we'll probably get an email or something with where it's going to be at. So that's my little PSA.
That's great. There was a possibility the JB team was going to make it, but it just didn't work out scheduling wise. So hopefully this will become a trend that they'll keep doing.
It certainly seems like Canonical's really excited about it, and I'm really curious to see what this new era of celebrating the really awesome Ubuntu community that exists is like. There's a lot of neat folks in it and participating and helping it grow and keep it diverse and active.
It's nice to see these kinds of things showing up more.
I agree.
It's something that I'm really happy to see because it brings all the stakeholders together in a way that can help make the Linux platform better, regardless of which distribution you're using.
Yeah,
a message we can all get behind.
I will say, if you are planning on joining in, it is happening in Prague, and so you might have to check the time zones on that one. I think if you're in the Pacific Northwest, it starts at like 1 a.m. tonight, so that's something to take into account. Just check their calendars. I'm sure they make it nice and easy for you to figure it out.
It would be great if they posted the videos on something like YouTube so people could see what it's about. I can tell you just from behind the scenes, it seems like they're very serious about this. They're really committed to it, just been, communicating diligently with us, and they're clearly trying to bring in as many people as they can and cover a wide range of topics. I used to love these things.
Yeah.
So here's hoping that this becomes an ongoing yearly thing. And I think it also shows a sign that Canonical is willing to spend real money to invest in the community, because I have a sense they are flying in a lot of people. And the cost of that and stay and all of that and the food is just astronomical. So it's a big commitment. And then also just a PSA, we're going to take a look at Fedora 37 next week on the show. So if you'd like to download it and try it out and join us.
Join us.
Yeah. You can either listen along with it or join us in the Mumble Room. Of course, it'll be live noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern over at Jupiter.2. And then last but not least, also on our radar, the end of year holiday lubs. They're coming up. You can boost in your prediction or you send an email. I was thinking people could use 2023 sats for their predictions.
Oh, I like that.
Go to linuxunplugged.com/contact to send in your predictions. We'll start collecting some of them, and then Brent will read through them and steal a few of them.
Of course. Thanks.
Maybe I will too. I'm looking forward to it. It's been a while because last year, it's been a while since we've done our pre-record format for them, because last year LUP just missed all the major holidays. But this year we're gonna land smack dab, I think, on Christmas or Christmas Eve or something like that.
Yeah, I believe so. And then New Year's.
Yeah. So there's that, right? So there's that. Yeah. So we're going to probably pre-record that, so that'll all be coming up on the calendar at jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar. But that's why we're putting the word out now.
We need your help.
Yeah, because it'll be coming up sooner than you'd think since we're pre-recording. So if you want to get your predictions in, boost them in 2023 with a little prediction.
And you know we need help if you've listened to any of the previous prediction episodes.
You do know, right? Seriously. Although I think maybe this is what it was my better years. We'll see. Maybe
you're going to crush it.
Maybe. I just know
I tried it already.
Speaking of boosts, we got one from Mike Paizo 1970, and he sent in 222,222 sats.
I'm a duck, D-U-K duck, loaded with talent.
And it's also a big dollar boost. I says, Chris, Wes, and Brent, I've been a listener since episode 125.
Oh,
just a little after you started, Wes.
Wow.
I usually just listen and then just consume the information. Rarely do I comment or interact with the hosts of media, but I wanted to give back for all that I've learned. Now that the Lightning Network allows me to do so, for the first time, I've invested in Bitcoin, changed my podcast app, and I'm finally able to give. You call 2,222 a row of ducks. Well, for my first boost ever, I am sending in you a row of super ducks. That's where the 222,222 sats comes from.
Things are looking up for old McDuck.
Thank you so much for everything. Well, Mike, thank you.
Yeah, no kidding.
And Mike, you don't even realize it, but you also put us at the top of the Fountain hot list for Friday night, Saturday morning. So we picked up a new batch of listeners thanks to your boost.
That's so amazing.
On top of that, you came in at a really great week because our node was down twice, once due to a software upgrade and once due to a very long power outage. And so we missed a lot of boosts. And so I appreciate that very much. And this also was the week that John A. lost his streak.
Oh,
which,
we still
we said, yeah, he's welcome. And he quit boosting. So that tells you something. But I think he will join us in studio at some point. But so thank you very much, Mike. We really appreciate it. It was sort of the perfect timing, the way it all came together with your boost and of course, the generous size of it. It meant that we picked up some new listeners, and I got a note from somebody who said, hey, I found you in Fountain today and loving the show. And it's so awesome. It's such a great thing because a Linux podcast is never going to be at the top of an iTunes or Spotify chart. It's never going to be at the top of their store, ever.
Well, what about when Joe Rogan's our next guest?
Right. And it's incredible because we're on a list of, really, really great podcasts, and it helps people with discovery.
I also love the idea of an old time listener, which also it's always delightful when, we get to hear from them.
Yeah.
Inspires a new listener too. That's just amazing.
And it's like price of Bitcoin is going to be low for a while. It's a great time to experiment. Sats are cheap. Experiment, see how hard it is and play with the different stacks because there's self-hosting involved if you'd like and a lot of that. So it can be a lot of fun. All right, so this week we're three wild and crazy guys. I have no idea what you all want to talk about. But I'm really looking forward to it. These are some of my favorite episodes. So let's start with Mr. Brentley. He's been on the road hunting moose and doing family time, and he's back now in his cottage, and he's got a topic for us.
Yeah, I am, as some of you might have picked up over the years, a big fan of Signal. And I noticed that there's been kind of a Snap Signal snafu that happened recently. The Signal Snap had a bit of a failure on multiple levels that was confusing at first, but I've dug in and I'm hoping to just kind of touch on it here with the hopes of asking one or two bigger questions once I'm done explaining what happened.
All right. Okay. Yeah, I did hear something about this. Like they had to pull the Snap or something from the Snap store.
Yeah, as far as I understand, it kind of vanished more so. And then users who
Oh.
were using the Signal Snap just saw that it was missing. And upon investigating with Snap List that you can run on the command line, it just indicated that it was in a Snap quarantine, which I had never seen before. Have you guys seen that before?
I have not.
No, I have not.
So that got me kind of like, oh, well, I like Signal and, well, snaps can be useful. And I wonder what happened here. And it turns out a lot happened. Mostly a bunch of communication breakdowns from a bunch of different sources. So there was a communication breakdown between Canonical and their volunteer Snap maintainer, Galgalesh or Merlin Siebrecht.
Okay, so this is a volunteer maintained Signal Snap.
Yeah, community maintainer who maintains like an unofficial Signal Snap, which we've seen before in, FlatHub as well. Some of these more popular applications are available, but aren't sort of the official flavor that comes straight from the, for instance, Signal developers.
Well, generally the company doesn't really often even know about Flatpak packaging or Snap packaging, or they're not interested in supporting it. And so somebody in the community is like, well, this is an in-demand app, so I'm going to step up and I'm going to make sure it's packaged, and God bless them.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's like a little bit of a security concern there too. I could see, especially with an app like Signal.
Yeah, so it seems Signal vanished and users noticed, but the Snap maintainer didn't know about it until they started seeing issues on their issue tracker and also just users saying, hey, what's going on? It's kind of missing. And they expected to hear from Canonical if something would have changed there. And so there's this kind of rabbit hole of different information that's a little bit everywhere that I've tried to put together. So from what I can tell, Marlin, the Snap maintainer, discovered the problem from users who linked some Snapcraft IO forums where users were asking the question, where did the Snap go for Signal? So Merlin responded. I had to find this out myself from users reporting it on our bug tracker. There was an initial communication breakdown between me and Canonical due to how the Snapcrafters publisher is structured. Canonical is changing their procedures to make sure this communication breakdown doesn't happen in the future. Due to how the Snapcraft publishers worked, Canonical was communicating with the wrong person about the takedown. They've since amended the process to make sure this doesn't happen anymore. Now, Daniel Menrique, who works at Canonical, as a policy reviewer, responded, I have updated the process documentation to be very, very explicit about this for future cases. So it sounds like small communication breakdown there that seems understandable, but caused a huge delay in getting this resolved. But it kind of gets more complex from there.
Okay, so if I'm following, they had to do a takedown. They do a takedown, but they don't know who to notify properly, so they just do it anyways. And then through the process of like realizing they didn't notify the right person, they come up with a new process, which they've now documented. But what's missing for me is why they had to remove it in the first place. Why was it so urgent to just rip it out of the Snap store?
Well, I'm leading there. And the reason I'm making it a bit of a question for you is that this is exactly how the users felt. So I wanted you to feel exactly how they did. So there was also a communications breakdown with users. So at first, in some of these threads, Canonical said, the Snap Store administrators had to remove the Snap in accordance with our policies. We hope to have it back shortly. And that's kind of all that they wrote in there. So it was very cryptic, at least from what I can read. So it turns out that the Signal lawyers asked for a DMCA takedown of the Signal Snap.
Aha.
And now it's not their official Snap offering. So I suppose because of perhaps trademark issues, that is definitely something they can do. Now, Merlin, the community maintainer, just wrote a bit more once they did get involved and dug into it behind the scenes. This is due to a DMCA takedown request coming from the lawyers representing Signal. Canonical is currently working with Signal to resolve the issue. I've suggested to Canonical to be more transparent with DMCA takedown requests, similar to how GitHub does it. Last I heard, they were discussing that internally. Due to how lawyers and legal threats work, Canonical is very hesitant to publicly talk about what's going on, understandably. You can expect a thorough post-mortem after the legal issues are cleared up. So I also noticed that Brian Acton actually spoke up about this on Hacker News. I did not expect to see Brian Acton, the Signal co-founder, leaving a little message there, which is kind of fun. But he wrote, "We spoke to our attorneys and found that there was a breakdown in communication between us and our attorneys. We are working to rectify and reinstate the Signal desktop as soon as possible. Sorry for the confusion."
You don't say.
So the lawyers preemptively went out, discovered this trademark violation, took action on behalf of their client? Do they just have like a blank check in which they're operating from?
So that's a good question, you know? Is that actually the case, or is this just them sort of covering their butts a little bit?
Could be. The lawyer's always a great one to blame. I mean, that's part of why you pay them. But I also could see it being like maybe there's just ongoing trademark protection. You know, I could see something they would do.
Could be. Yeah, I know in the past they've had some issues with having Signal, for instance, in F-Droid as well. So there might be a history there that we could dig into a little bit more at some point. But this whole kind of situation, which is multiple layers of communication breakdowns, it sounds like, just got me thinking a few questions that I thought we could explore. And I think the most obvious one is this third-party app bundling that's happening for snaps and also for Flatpaks. I just wondered, is it still a good idea? It was really essential when those platforms and technologies first came to light because, you know, that's pretty essential to get users on the platforms is to have the apps that you want to use, like, you know, the commercial ones. And also, even though this is an open source application, Signal, it still has some trademark issues there. So I wondered, now that snaps and Flatpaks are a bit more mature, should we really have the original developers be the snap maintainers instead of community members? I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Well, but so even if snaps are more popular now, or, you know, these types of packages, you still got to get the maintainers to be interested, right? Like, we would have needed if they were interested in maintaining the snap themselves, we wouldn't, hopefully none of this would have happened.
Yeah, that seems to be the chicken or the egg problem, isn't it?
And then do you get it on like multiple stores? Is it going to be Snap and Flat Hub? Is
right.
It, you know?
Yeah.
And I could see why they're hesitant to commit to that for sure.
I think maybe Canonical has struck the balance here a little better than FlatHub has, where they make it pretty clear now, after they've had some issues in the past. Thunderbird, you can see, is being published by Canonical. They make the publisher clear, and then they also have this thing called a verified account. And then if you go, say, take a look at Slack, here it's very clear that Slack is actually being published by the Slack group,
Right.
who has also been verified by Canonical. And I think that's lessons they learned to try to make that more clear. But I don't know if A, users are even aware to look for that difference, and B, I don't know if it really answers the question of what happens when it's something that needs like significant trust. Signal comes to mind, maybe like a Bitcoin wallet or something that you would use to encrypt your files, like something that you want to place a lot of trust into. Should that be packaged by a third-party maintainer, or should we only trust it from the original source? So far in Linux, we've made the trade-off and decided, well, the maintainers will do it. Like if you look at a traditional distro, none of the packages in there are generally being packaged by the upstream person typically.
For Signal specifically, I've traditionally used their official deb, which seems like a perfectly fine way to go. But since we had our summer of immutability, I dove a little bit more into Flatpaks, thanks to both of you. And I kind of ran into that issue, which was trying to discover whether it was an official or not. And then when I discovered that it wasn't, trying to determine if I should trust these people or not. And, you know, I tend to love open source and everyone involved as a basic default. But then the question becomes, well, should I? And I found that difficult to discover because you end up going down a rabbit hole and ending up, you know, on the project's GitHub, where there's like 3 maintainers. Sometimes there's more than that. But these are still people that I don't know their association. So it's a funny little pickle we've got there.
the nature of this whole problem comes down to a very ugly paradox that we don't like to talk about. The paradox is we want all these applications to exist and be available for the medium of delivery that we need or want to use, but nobody cares. Because nobody cares, somebody has to do that work in the first place, and maybe an ISV, because we're going to call them what they are, independent software vendors. An ISV will pick some mechanism in which they're going to deliver it, whether it's a tarball, an app image, an RPM, a deb, or even just like a self-extracting shell script, which is the most horrifying way to do it, but there you go. They'll pick a method, and it will not be the method you want. And so somebody has to do that transformation from one method to the other. And that is never, ever, ever going to stop, because there is no incentive for it to stop. You have tug of wars across all the different dimensions. So you've got people who are gatekeepers of the software centers, who in the various distributions, who will pick one format or the other. Even if they could enable both, they won't, for either jealousy or ego or because there's a technical problem or something like that. And this comes back to a second order of issues that we have, which is that in the open source space, we have this unwritten contract that there are actually two levels of responsibility here. There is the responsibility of the creator of the software, and there's the responsibility of the deliverer of the software. With FlatHub and SnapStore, I don't know whether they have a name for this officially, but in those worlds, they're trying to essentially break this contract by saying the person who creates the code should be the one that delivers the code in theory, but they also know that they don't have the pull to do it, and that this also creates a legal conundrum, because whenever you're delivering software that is not yours, you are actually taking on legal responsibility and liability. Again, not a lawyer, not legal advice, yada, yada, yada. But generally speaking, if you look at how all this stuff works, the moment you take a piece of code, whether it's compiled or not, and you do a transformation to deliver it, you're taking responsibility for that code at some level. And this is why a DMCA takedown by the Signal people elicited the response that it did. Because at the end of the day, whether Canonical likes to admit it or not, and they definitely don't like to admit to this, they are ultimately publishing every application, and at some level are legally responsible for every application delivered through the Snap Store. This is also true for FlatHub. At some level, they are responsible for every single thing that's on there. And if something is wrong, they are the ones in hot water just as much as everyone else. Possibly more so because they're complicit. There's a whole lot of things that, like, Linux distributions have historically done quite a lot to avoid that these new age systems don't do. And because of that, we are going to see a lot more of these kinds of things happening as that exposure goes up and the proponents of these systems push it harder and harder. And the end result is going to be, with these new formats, probably what's going to eventually happen is essentially maintainer bankruptcy. If it is not delivered by the creator and it is not an open source solution, it is just going to disappear from all the stores, because the legal risk will go up over time, not down, because this unwritten contract of you don't sue me for making your software available will be violated over and over and over.
Ooh, you should write this down, Neil. I feel like this would be a good spicy prediction for our predictions episode.
Oh yeah, it's going to keep happening. Like Signal has a long and storied history of really not liking redistribution of their application. Yeah. It doesn't matter what platform it is. If it is redistributed by someone else, they're going to go after you.
Neil, it's just the lawyers. Neil, just blame the lawyers.
So the lawyers are operating on a directive that exists at the top level that says, this is a thing we care about. And you know what? There's a lot of vendors that are the same way. Some of them hand wave it away.
Standard practice at certain sizes.
Yeah, so some vendors hand wave this away. I know, for example, that TeamViewer, even though their EULA actually forbids redistribution, they implicitly kind of hand wave it away for Linux people because it's, they're too small and nobody cares, yada, yada, yada. But
Sneaking it in.
if you actually read the end user license agreements of virtually every proprietary software package, you're not allowed to do this.
Yeah.
And that is actually a thing we've all blatantly kind of ignored.
Well, let's not, come on.
Yeah,
come on,
and so this is going to this will keep biting us. Ironically, as Linux becomes more popular, it will start biting us more. And so, places like, the infamous third-party repos that host non-free software in the various Linux distributions. I'm not going to name names, but we all know what they are. And the Flat Hubs and the Snapcrafts and all these other things in the world, they're going to get bitten and burned over and over and over again. And we're going to see a bankruptcy of those things.
Save it for the prediction show. That's spicy. I won't steal it. That's good. You own that one. I think if you guys will allow it, I think Colonel and I should be these guys just for a moment, because not only do I hear the belly aching about Signal getting pulled out of the Snap Store, but I also been hearing a lot of belly aching about them dropping SMS support. And girl, just use Matrix already, right, Colonel? Just use Matrix.
So one of the things I wanted to say on that is that Matrix is a decentralized program. You have multiple clients that are all compatible. You have a distributed network of servers. There is no one place that it can be taken down. Whereas Signal is a centralized proprietary application with one set of servers, one app, and is, in my opinion, hostile to the open source community.
Oh, and I would also say is sort of subjective to one large ego who sort of has a vision, is very particular about that vision.
Moxie Marlinspike has been very hostile to the open source community, not just Signal, but also other places as well. There was an application that in F-Droid that they took the Signal mobile code base, used the web hook for the desktop application just so that they could have a Android application that didn't rely on Google Services Framework. They went after them hard and basically shut them down. And that project was willing to work with Signal, was willing to, what do we have to do to make this okay with you? And at the end of the day, Moxie, through GitHub comments and whatnot, it's still all out there. You can go find it. He shut them down and said, no, this is basically, he said, it's my project. You'll do it my way, and I don't want you.
That's the thing. And before we completely move off the Matrix thing, I'll just say, not all Matrix is Element. Fluffy Chat is very much a Telegram-like experience or Signal-like experience, because I'd say Signal is even simpler than Telegram. Fluffy Chat is very clean. It's cross-platform. It's GPL3. And it takes the complexity of Matrix and it puts it behind a UI simpler than Telegram. And if you're on iOS specifically, there's Neo, N-I-O, which has been built with Swift UI from scratch using all of the iOS design languages. This is MPL. It's also open source. And it gives a very clean, very minimal messaging experience. It's all Matrix underneath it. And the reason why that's powerful is because you could be sitting back with a big old full-scale Element client, or you could be on Android with a totally different client, but you can still communicate. And they can't pull any one client and they can't pull any one server. And so it's not just Element when we mean Matrix. When we talk Matrix, it can be these more purpose-built clients too. And if you go to matrix.org/clients, you can see a surprisingly big list of different clients for different platforms, from mobile to desktop to the web. So matrix.org/clients for that.
Had you presented Matrix as an option to replace something like Signal maybe a year ago, 8 months ago, I would have said, no way. It's not even close to being usable. But these days, I'm changing my mind on that. It's actually been really nice. So I think you guys are onto something here.
Yeah, it's harder when you already have a whole social group on a particular service. I get it. Sometimes people move quick, though. Sometimes something comes up and people, they just jump ship. So when that opportunity comes up, be ready.
I also have two, let's call them notes, because you guys are all friends here. As far as I understand, the Signal desktop is a GPL v3, so it is open source. And so the backend service, I don't believe is. Maybe that's the distinction. And I'm pretty sure from what I've been reading that Moxie's not with Signal anymore. So maybe that's a good thing.
So Moxie's not with Signal. And yes, the client is a Faro GPL. But rebuilds that are not officially blessed by Signal will not be allowed to connect to the Signal server. So it doesn't matter.
Bitwarden.com/Linux. Go try it for free as an individual, or if you're a team, maybe you're in an enterprise, you can get a free trial when you go to bitwarden.com/Linux. Straight up, I have to be honest with you. I have tried them all, and Bitwarden I have found to be the best and easiest way to store, share, and sync your sensitive data. And I love that Bitwarden is open source. It's trusted by millions of individuals, teams, open source projects, organizations, and more for all their secure password storage. And when you do have to share that stuff, also Bitwarden helps you there too. In fact, it's really the only way you can feel safe kind of moving that sort of stuff around the internet between individuals. You don't want to write it down on a sticky note. Wes and I have been using it personally for years. I think Wes longer than I have. And Bitwarden's been rolling out great features like account switching in the mobile app or fast mail and DuckDuckGo integration so you can use a unique email address with every site or service or app that you're signing up with, as well as a secure password, as well as a unique username. I mean, that's really, you can just layer on the security there. And I noticed Bitwarden just recently posted a great tutorial. I always like to keep my eye on this stuff for you guys because, why not leverage this and just get even more, I guess, secure? Because they have Bitwarden CLI, of course. Yeah, that's right. They have a command line version of Bitwarden, and you can use this and pop in your passwords in your shell when you need to log into something on the command line. You can leverage Bitwarden CLI and shell functions to create simple workflows that just allow you to unlock your secrets into environment variables whenever you need, without requiring you to hard code your secrets into your dot files. How nice is that, especially if you want to move them around between machines? So Bitwarden CLI could be a really great tool for your tool chest. Is that the phrase? I'll put a link to the guide in the show notes so you can check it out and see if it'll work for you. But go over to bitwarden.com/Linux to support the show, or send it to somebody you know that could use better password management. Maybe a friend, a family member, place of work, open source project. They're out there. Send them to bitwarden.com/Linux. It'll be worth their time. And it's the best way for them to stay secure online too. bitwarden.com/Linux. All right, Mr. Payne. So what would you like to share with the class this week?
Yeah, I just wanted to send a little love to Godot, the cross-platform free and open source game engine. It's MIT, don't you know, launched in January 2014. And it's one of those really special projects, I think, because, in the game making ecosystem, there's just not that many great tools that, you might be able to get it for free or use it, but that's, some student or creator license, or, if you make any serious money, they're going to want to cut, or you're going to need to spend a whole bunch of money on these assets through their system.
They don't do any of that?
No. They're trying to make a project that has a big set of common tools so you can just focus on making your game. You don't have to shell out and use a whole bunch of go find all the top leading industry applications that you're going to need to do your audio stuff and to go make your graphics. Now, of course, you can do that and import stuff if you want, but Godot's trying to make a friendly, you're learning about how to get into games. You can use it for serious games too, but with a holistic approach that lets you really have everything you need under one roof.
Looks like they just had a brand new beta release just a couple days ago, too.
Yeah, 3.5 came out in August, which was really nice, and they're working on a 4.0. They're in the beta steps right now, and that's got a lot of promising stuff. And you can export native Linux games just right from Godot, so they're platform friendly for us. You can target Android, you can target WebAssembly. It runs on Linux as well as, of course, a bunch of other platforms. You can compile it for BSD if you want to, or run it on Windows or Mac. Yeah, there's even a web editor. If you want to go crazy, there's a web editor.
It's interesting you bring this up because, so they just released a new beta a couple of days ago, and then a couple of days before that, they moved to a new foundation.
They did, yeah. Okay, so as I mentioned, they started way back in 2014, just a couple of people who were trying to hack together a game engine. In 2015, they joined the SFC. The SFC provided them a foundation structure, a way to sort of take donations from projects, because they'll sometimes get sponsorships from game studios or various other players in the industry, and you need legal frameworks, you need processes, you need accountants who can help you do those things.
Gosh,
and it's been I think both parties have been really happy with it. It's maybe a good example of what the SFC can do for open source projects is let them start to hire people part time, eventually start to hire people and support them full time to work on Godot. But at this point, Godot's really taken off. It's grown a lot, and so they're launching their own foundation now, and they're pitching this as it's a graduation from the SFC to launch their own foundation. They're trying to take a lot off of how Blender does it. I think we've all been pretty pleased. I don't know that they're perfect, but as far as foundations go, it seems like Blender's got a good foundation in order. So that gives me some hope that the art part of this does seem to be that they want to mix up the different approaches that they can have. Maybe tailor some things to a thing that would make sense for Godot that didn't make sense for all the projects under the SFC umbrella. So they're thinking maybe they're going to have crowdfunding campaigns like Blender or Krita do. They're talking about maybe setting up something that lets users start to sell assets for an asset library and integrate that in. Maybe sell merchandise or just get a little more flexibility with sponsoring events or having events, or how might you fund that or try to fly people in to be there. So there's a lot going on, and it's really easy to get started with. They've got a Python-like scripting language, like Godot script that's built in.
Okay.
You can also use C# if you already know C#. So that's supported right out of the box. And I think you can even use C++ or Rust, or there's some like community-supported versions too if you're a masochist like that. Yeah, I think you can use Rust with it.
Okay. This sounds like a really cool pick, or it's not a pick, but I guess it's a cool subject to bring to the class, I guess. But I'm curious why it's on your radar. Are you fooling around with making a game?
I've dabbled a little bit.
Are you dabbling on a game?
A little bit,
Really?
yeah. Well, so it's actually I've been trying to help. My brother is very creative in this aspect, and he's a big gamer. He likes these things. He plays D&D, and is into sort of crafting all the different aspects of a game. And so I've been trying to help him. He's learning some, and that's been a fun adventure for me to sort of sit alongside and. As he's learning the technical side, and I'm trying to support him there.
And you're sending him down this path of Godot.
Yeah, he found it Godot.
Godot.
He actually found it first. I'd heard of it. I'd followed it and looked at the news, but it was so neat because he's got. I did give him a Linux laptop a couple years ago that he does use, but he's using it on his main sort of Windows gaming PC. But it didn't matter. Like I could just load his project in and make some updates and be like, oh, maybe try doing it this way and. Share it back with him, and he could load it up on Windows, no problem. So
that's powerful.
Yeah, it's been a really nice, fun. And now I'm not expert. I haven't made any fancy games yet or anything, but there's a lot of tutorials out there. There's a strong community on YouTube of creators who are sharing walking you through. Got example project files you can download. So it seems super accessible.
Before today, I was aware of it, but I think in the back of my mind, I thought it was like using Go for creating games.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize
that would be a good name for it.
That's why I thought it was Godot. But Godot.
And I think in the past they had a little more limited scope. It seemed like maybe it was better focused on like 2D games and stuff. But these days they've got rich 3D capabilities. You can make VR applications if you want. You can publish to WebAssembly. You can publish for all the mobile platforms. Like it seems like if you're not a professional, you're trying to just learn or explore. You could go a long way with Godot before it was going to be your limitation.
You know what I like about their website? I'm seeing a lot of Tux the Penguin,
mm-hmm.
and I'm seeing a lot of open source stuff on here. I'm seeing the open source logo. I'm seeing open source listed as one of their main features. Great. That is really slick. Well, thanks for telling us about that.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to share with you guys a little trend that I've noticed, and I know some of our community members have because I've seen it getting discussed in our Matrix kind of recently. And that is, since Elon's announcement that he's taking over Twitter, that rough timeline, we are seeing reports of just massive user gains for Mastodon. 70,000 users joining in the last couple of weeks is one of the numbers I've seen going around.
I know I've heard it on some, NPR type segments, other news coverage. It doesn't get a lot of play, but its name is thrown out there.
CNN, headline from CNN, updated yesterday. With Twitter in chaos, Mastodon is on fire. This is from your CNN news here. And this is the bit that I noticed that I thought was pretty interesting. They say, the service, speaking about Mastodon, the service has a similar look to Twitter with a timeline of short updates sorted chronologically rather than algorithmically. It lets users join a slew of different servers run by various groups and individuals rather than one central platform controlled by a single company like Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook. Now, isn't that interesting that is one of the things they decided to kind of emphasize to the audience there? It's decentralized nature. And I don't think that, Twitter's dead and Mastodon's going to take over or anything like that. But I find it interesting, and I'm curious to know what you think, about these open source projects that build and build for years and years. And we know about them, we hear about them, and they kind of hover, and they have some users, and we kind of keep them alive as the enthusiasts, and we kind of use them a little bit. But then every now and then something breaks in the world, and the normals hear about one of these things that's been around for years, and they rush in. And all of a sudden, a project just has tens of thousands of more users, and there's tons more instances going along. It's a fascinating phenomena. What do you attribute that to? That it's like just wasn't good enough to replace the main thing until
Well, you
What,
know,
it
you've
got
got
bad
that.
enough?
You've got the network effect. You know, what do you
Yeah.
need? What do you need? A harder to figure out, harder to set up. You got to make some choices to pick your instant sort of system. If you know, you're already on the functionally the one instance everyone cares about.
I wondered, is the pull hitting you? Do you guys feel like it's time to join Mastodon or get on a Mastodon if you're not? Either one of you?
I am curious again. You know, I don't know that I've ever actually set it up. I have, followed it for a while, but
What about you, Brentley? Are you getting the Mastodon urge at all?
Well, the first time I got curious was when I was in Alan Jude's basement doing a brunch with him, and he said, "Hey, are you a Fediverse guy?" And so I looked into it a little bit. But these days, I feel like it's almost irresponsible not to at least check it out a little bit.
I was just not interested in any more social media, like Telegram, Twitter, Matrix, several others that I can't think of off the top of my head. Those are sufficient for me. I didn't really want to add another one, so I just sort of said no. But then when the podcasting 2.0 stuff came along, and they had a Mastodon to just talk about podcasting 2.0, it all of a sudden made a ton of sense because it was like a niche category. They're talking about app development, namespace development. They're, hashing out what the new standards should be for things. And it's like people discussing podcasting. And all of a sudden, like, okay, I'll join that. That makes a ton of sense. So I do have a Mastodon account, but it's on a very specific instance.
and you're not really using the sort of federation aspect.
No. Am I missing something? Because I love the Matrix federated aspect, but Matrix seems to really fill this hole for me. But I wonder if it is the time to have, like, is it time to have a JB Mastodon, or should I just be joining somebody else's Mastodon? What is the protocol there? Are Mastodon servers a pain in the butt to run? I know you looked a little bit into setting it up.
It didn't seem that hard. I mean, there's some, official containers out there and such. So.
This is exactly the conversation we had around Matrix. And what is the size of that box we're running these days?
Okay, fair. We did it's on like a 48 core rig now.
Yeah, we also made some mistakes that maybe we've learned from.
Yeah.
We have to find out.
You kind of want to set one up, don't you?
Well,
What is wrong
how
with
better
you?
to try it?
What is wrong with you? I mean, I'd kind of be down, I suppose.
What's the point of having a system you can run yourself if you don't at least try running it?
But then what happens if I already have an account? I have an account on Mastodon.
I believe there's a way to migrate. I don't know.
Is there?
I don't know how easy that is.
And then also I know like the PeerTube instance is also part of that federation. It's very confusing to me.
If you've created a Mastodon presence on one home server and decide you want to migrate to another, there's in pretty much every Mastodon, I should say, every activity pub Twitter clone-like implementation, because that's
Okay.
basically what this is.
Yeah.
In their account UI, you can transfer your account to another account that you have created, and it'll basically create a forwarding address. And so all of your followers will move, in theory. All of your followings will move. It'll create a continuity between your posts, all that
Wow.
other fun stuff. So picking one is not a forever choice. If you don't like your home server at some point in the future, you can jump ship. If your home server is now broken and you need to move somewhere else, you can do that too.
So would it be weird? See, I think what we probably should have done with Matrix is we should have set up Matrix and just left it to the JB people, and then everybody else uses matrix.org to create their account and join our server.
That was one of the mistakes I was thinking about earlier.
That's what the Tux Digital folks did with their system. Was they only allowed people to create accounts on the Tux Digital server when they were creators of the network.
So I wonder, is the solution with Mastodon to do the same?
It's more scalable that way, because like Matrix, Mastodon's underlying system works off of synchronizing events via a pub sub mechanism. ActivityPub and Matrix behave very similarly, even though they're different standards. And so you have the same kind of resource constraints and performance constraints. So yeah, you probably want to create a lockdown Mastodon server that only y'all are using, and then everyone else just kind of connects with you through their own.
I mean, part of the whole federated benefits, right? I mean, just have our own and then connect out to all our friends.
But the important part is to make sure that your server is discoverable, right? Like if it's not, then all of that doesn't matter.
What I like about it is it's sort of like it's our own form of verification because we'd have an @jupiterbroadcasting.com domain. It's like you'd know it really is us. And, we don't have to have any blue check mark that's $8 a month. It's just we have our own domain name. I like it.
I think one question I would have is, what can it provide that our Matrix instance and use of it for the last 6+ months wouldn't provide?
Well, I suppose there's people that are on the Mastodon Fediverse that aren't in Matrix, so you could follow them. There is an argument for Matrix to be used for real-time discussion and something else to be used for more longer-term stuff that people can post and come back to at all different hours and review in a feed on their own schedule.
Right. I mean, because I suppose like the Twitter style things are used for different purposes by different groups and all that. But one of them is a sort of like broadcasty or musing or, whatever jokes, things that you wouldn't really put necessarily in like a public channel unless you were very social about it.
God, the more we talk about it, the less I want to do it. I really do. It's just, I hate social media so much. But then I remember, like, except for this is selecting for very high quality signal, like the open source community, the free software community, and in particular the JB audience, which this would skew towards, is higher than average signal. So then it does make it more worth it again. And
so here's the thing to think about, right? So ActivityPub, the underlying protocol that what we call Mastodon, or some would call Pleroma or some of these other ones, right? That underlying protocol is not just used for Twitterati style messaging. It's also used for things like blogging. So I believe, Write Freely is an ActivityPub based blog platform. And there are a few others out there. And basically one thing you can do is to combine long form and short form in such a way that you would post on a system attached through ActivityPub, and someone could comment on it through this. And then you wind up having this federated mechanism of connecting these two. So having, and again, this same address can exist in different solutions at the same time, because again, the ActivityPub publishing address is what matters here. So for example, Chris Laz at jupiterbroadcasting.com. I really hate the scheme that they picked for ActivityPub.
Yeah.
It's really dumb. Yeah. But all right, put that aside. That address could be both a blogging platform where you are writing about or blogging or whatever, because PeerTube is also ActivityPub oriented.
Right.
And all of these things connect. And as you're using a singular identity to publish as, everyone else can see them and they can reply to them, which turn into comments and visible feeds and things of that nature. And then you wind up having this interconnected relationship. And this goes for like PixelFed as well, right? The federated image hosting thing that also operates on ActivityPub. And
I've noticed that a little bit. I've already noticed some ActivityPub cross-publishing with PeerTube, and that is pretty powerful.
ActivityPub is designed for multiple forms of transmission from a single identity, whereas the Matrix protocol is designed for real-time communication, or at least a facsimile of it, across a single identity, across different servers and things like that with a single identity. So the idea is, with ActivityPub, you take these disparate services and you connect them to a unified identity, and different types of content are published with that identity, and everything weaves together, and clients that respect these different types of events process them correctly. So if you're looking at a federated blog viewer, or if you're looking at a Twitterati style client, or if you're looking at a photo gallery Pinterest style thing or whatever, right? The idea of ActivityPub is that you have a coherent singular identity that can have all these multiple forms of content, and then the clients will interpret that and do what you will with it. Whereas with Matrix, you're just talking about, you have a dedicated purpose. These features are being built around a particular single method of communication, and you're supporting that mechanism with its clients and servers. So that's where the core difference is. Like,
yeah, that's a good distinction to make.
You're not going to see Matrix do like image galleries. I mean, technically, I suppose you could do that, but like nobody's like going out there and doing that.
Yeah,
whereas ActivityPub, that's a very real thing you would do.
All right. So let me know, everyone out there, what your thoughts are on if you're feeling the pull towards Mastodon. I would go if there's enough audience there. I think it'd be something I'd consider. like to hear your thoughts on it.
MJVC wrote in, just wanted to report that I've been successfully using NixOS on the Steam Deck as a desktop replacement. Dual booting SteamOS and NixOS gives me the best of both worlds. There are a few hiccups with the touchscreen, but aside from that, it works pretty flawlessly.
That is really cool on
I
the Steam
love
Deck.
it. Oh, man.
I replied very quickly saying, tell us how we want to do this. So we might have an update coming soon.
And I wonder, is it Plasma or are you using GNOME? Tell me. Yeah.
Good question. I think this is more of a teaser than a, full description. So I'm going to wait for the update and we'll come back on that. 5 also wrote in about NixOS. Surprise, surprise. I have an idea. You keep saying, Chris, that you don't want to pollute Linux Unplugged with too much NixOS. Well, we did it again this week, didn't we? While I agree, I think NixOS is so vast that maybe you can start NixOS Unplugged.
That's what we need. We need another show.
Just what you asked for.
What we'll do is we'll just geek out and then we'll just surface the best of. We'll condense it down and just really bring you the nuggets from time to time. Right? Is that you like that plan? Does that sound?
I think so.
All right. Let's go with that.
And now it is time for Le Boost.
So the first boost we're going to get to this week is actually follow-up on a boost that was sent in from Nev a couple of weeks ago, who offered to send us an Arc GPU from Intel. Incredibly generous. So we wrote back and said, no, but we'll borrow it for a little bit. And guess what? It's right here.
It's here.
We have it right here.
Look at that
Showed
beauty.
Up. The ASRock Challenger ITX Intel Arc A380. I'm going to open her up here.
There's actually a pie in the box.
I actually have not opened it, so if there is, or a bomb, we're going to stream it live. We will find out. Pie would be not what I want, but not like totally disappointing.
I think that might be our version of a Rickroll at this point. I don't know.
Oh, there's an envelope in here. I feel like we should do the Johnny Carson thing, so we'll read
Anthrax?
that. Oh, here it is.
At least we died doing what we love.
Nav, you're the best, a.k.a. Josh. The best. Look at this. Oh, look at this beautiful card. Oh, there's a thumb drive in here, too.
Okay. But what? No, you know better than to put a strange thumb drive.
There's a thumb drive. Wouldn't that be fun?
Tempting.
Well, maybe we'll find out in the members feed. We'll figure out what's in the thumb drive. But yeah, this check it out, Wes. That's a compact little card. The A380
it is. Doesn't look bad though.
And I imagine I think our Thalio order is going to go in Monday morning. I've been so busy. I haven't got around to it. That's how stupid busy I am.
You want to savor that click, when you actually hit the order too. You got to be in the right state of mind. Glass of champagne in hand.
I've come with a really reasonable build. I think it's a very reasonable build of the Thalio, and I'll share it when we get it. But that's going in there. Look at it. Yeah, take it out. Take it out. Let's pull it out. Oh yeah. That is beautiful. Intel, thank you. Thank you for making this, Intel, finally. Look at the fan on that thing. Hold that up a little bit there, Wes, so we can look at it. Yeah, look at that thing. It's got probably not quite as big as a 120 millimeter fan on the top of it. Yeah, but one big fan. So hopefully
there we go.
Yeah, that really moves. Good job, Wes. You got it.
You got to do a fan test. Got to do a fan test.
Theater of the mind. Wes blows across the fan to prove to the listener it's really there.
We got one HDMI, 3 display ports here. Nice little plugs it ships with.
I mean, it's not quite, but it's almost half the length of a new NVIDIA card. It's not quite, but it is stout. It's wide and stout. It's nice. So we'll throw that in the new Thalio and throw it through its paces, and hopefully get OBS going with that.
Is it up to the challenge? Will it meet our needs?
It's not ready yet. OBS, I think, I saw the pull request go in to turn on quick sync video stuff for free codecs and support for the new generation of the Intel Arc stuff like the last week. So I don't think that's a thing for a little while.
Building OBS from source again. We're back here.
Yep. Also, just a couple days ago, Michael Larbrell reported that you need an Intel ME enabled system to update the GSC firmware on the Arc right now. So that means A, it's got to be an Intel system to even update the firmware, and B, you need Intel ME enabled, which I don't know what that means for the Thalio. But since we're only borrowing it, it's not the end of the world for us. But it's something.
It's weird.
It's one of those
clearly a new product, but that's okay.
Yeah.
So
Kind of an era.
on System 76 machines, the management engine is turned off. So that's going to be a problem.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like I said, if I was buying this forevers, yes. But since we just want to test it and we're willing to do a little bit of the grunt work to make that work.
I don't actually know if the System 76 things give you the ability to turn it on. You should tell us when you get the Paleo whether they give you an option to turn it back on.
Yeah. Well, I'll also try a firmware update if there is one, just to see what happens. Hopefully. I don't think it would break it, right? I don't want to break
Chris breaks the GPU.
All right.
Now, Chris, do you know how long you have this for? Is there like a loaner expiry date? Have you come to some agreement there?
So basically, until I were done, I guess he didn't really say. I don't intend to keep it too long. A few years. No big deal. Just a few years.
Sounds great.
Okay, update. I guess Intel reached out to say that firmware updating will work on AMD platforms. I just don't think all the details of like what weird app you have to run or how exactly that will work. But.
Okay. So it will work.
Well, the good news, it's only $120-ish. So, if Chris breaks it, he can afford to pay the guy back.
We'll take it out of Brent's sats. All right. Knights 62 boosted in with 4096 sats. This is my first boost. I used the Blue Wallet Albi combination. So Blue Wallet to get the sats and then Albi as the Lightning wallet. The idea of setting up my own Lightning node seems very appealing, but I found that the setup is actually working really easy. I'm loving that I can just give some value this way. Now, here's a question about NixOS versus Ansible on other distros. Can you go deeper into what makes Nix so much better in your opinion? Couldn't a well-documented Ansible setup do most of the same things? I'd also love to hear more about the Nix package manager on other distros. Does this replace Ansible? It's a great question because we get this one a lot. And I don't think the position of the show is one is better than the other, to make that clear. And Ansible is obviously going to support a lot wider range of combination of devices, services, hardware, distributions, software in general. And we use Ansible here. So it's not like we're anti-Ansible. I think what I explained earlier today with the setup I was doing, where I, just took a config file off my laptop and dropped it on my ODROID, very different systems, very different hardware. And I just rebuilt and I had a fully functional system without having all of the overhead of also having Ansible and having to understand how to write a playbook and manage all of that. It's just basically some YAML, and you can almost always find an example. And there's a simplicity if you're only using Nix. It doesn't really work so great outside of that. You could use the Nix package manager on just about anything, but
yeah, I use it on my work Mac and I love it having it there. It's super, super helpful.
Yeah, I think it's better than Brew in most cases. So
I think the other part too is you're right, like Ansible, super flexible. You can use it all kinds of different places. It's trying to solve problems that Nix is not primarily targeted at. There's a lot of differences because Ansible is a big tool and Nix also is a big tool, especially between Nix and NixOS. But the other part is, I think for you, at least from what we've talked about, kind of wanted to get away from those other distros, right? Like, okay, if I use Ansible, I might not have to think about it as much because I wrote that playbook and it's solved, but like you're still using apt under the hood or things like that. Like Nix is a much more holistic, for the things it works for, you've got this package and system that all feels tightly together and lean and mean and not just sort of bolted on top to try to paper over some of the limitations of the base system.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. And you and I both just trend towards a preference for very simple servers, minimum viable server, nothing more than it needs to be. And then, because you and I apparently are masochists, when we can, we also make them rolling. Because if you keep it simple and you appropriately separate applications and data and you've got good backups and snapshots, I actually think the best experience in Linux is a very modern system. I wouldn't say cutting edge, because there's some stuff in Nix that isn't super cutting edge, but and that all has worked really well without having all of the Ansible overhead. So yes, you put it very well.
Well, our next boost comes from Cass Peeland with 3,690 sats.
BOOST!
Just a simple message this time. I hope the boost in streaming sats will help you podcasters.
Good to see you again, Koss.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much.
Another favorite of ours. Wait, all boosters are our favorites. But it's Rusta Casta Versa. Boosted in with 1,000 sats. And calling out something that I think we all noticed and appreciated. Big mumble room energy on the intro last week. Love it.
Yeah.
So, hey, thanks, Mumble Room. It was really painful not to be here last week. And having that strong intro, knowing that you were here to support Chris, that helped a lot.
I was. Yep. Also, a big shout out to Neil in there specifically. And the whole Mumble Room was just great. I think they had my back, because you guys were both out. Brent on his secret mission to moose hunt and you with the sick. And so to have them just there with my back was great. But the funny thing is literally everybody internally on our internal chat, like that was the first comment.
Yeah.
That Mumble intro energy. Yeah. Totally killed it. That was great. So thank you very much.
I will say we also did get some feedback, specifically saying that Neil was very much enjoyed last episode. So thanks, Neil, for filling in for us.
Aw, well, I don't know how to take that. I guess thanks. You're welcome.
That's appropriate.
I don't know how to answer that.
He's blushing.
Tater boosts in with 2,050 sats.
Coming in hot with the boost.
Tater says, coming in hot with the boost.
We love that one.
That's my favorite.
I feel like Tater took my advice. I said, you don't have to write us something profound to kick off a huge discussion. Just send us the boost for support because we love those. Thank you very much, Tater.
Well, NorCal Geek wrote something profound. Hello, NorCal Geek, with 80 sats.
You're doing a good job.
Hey, I know I'm a few weeks behind, but I wanted to put in my 2 cents on the ButterFS discussion. I mean, we're always talking about ButterFS, so I think you're right on time. I'm currently using OpenSUSE Micro OS Desktop as my daily driver. Micro OS is an immutable OS which uses ButterFS snapshots instead of OS tree, like Silverblue does. For me, it's been rock solid. The updates apply every time, and I haven't had to break or roll back yet. That's a W for ButterFS to me.
I agree. And I think OpenSUSE too. I think one of the things that they point out here is they're using it as the desktop daily driver. And to have that kind of rock solid performance, that is a win. That is super nice. We spent a period of time between distros. We spent some time with OpenSUSE. And I played with the immutable version for a little bit on a CM4. And we set up a Jellyfin server on it. And we all kind of added a bunch of different stuff to it. And I was really impressed. I really was. Again, there's a lot of OS there. And we're more of a minimum viable OS type guys, but it's a great OS. It is that.
Yeah, I think it could be, it seemed very administratable, designed with that kind of in mind, which you got to appreciate when things go wrong.
User 720 also wrote in with 100 cents. GIF? Let's hold a boost ballot. Here's 100 sats on GIF.
Wow, then GIF is winning right now. So far.
We'll find out next week.
Yeah. That's it right there, right? I guess, woof, okay.
Who are we to stand in the way?
Poll over.
Yeah, so far GIF's the winner. Maybe it only takes 100 sats. Maybe it's settled. Maybe it's not.
JPC also boosted in with 22,222 sats. Love the show, by the way. I'm using Boost CLI. Just like that.
It's
awesome.
It's the new, by the way, I use Arch. Huh?
Right?
It is more technical than setting up Arch.
Yeah, maybe you want to set it up on
by
Arch.
about a mile.
Know.
I am so impressed, JPC. Thank you also for the generous boost.
Yeah.
But also, Boost CLI is a serious badge of honor. You have mastered multiple layers of the stack, and you are very impressive. Thank you for the boost. I haven't even got that working yet, and I've been playing around with Bitcoin for 13 years, and I haven't even gotten that working yet. So give me a break. All right, maybe 11 years. Anonymous boosted in with 1,000 sats just to say, regarding caring about if the art is generated from AI, when I'm looking at it not because of the artist. I'm looking at it because it's beautiful, much like diamonds. Even when they're created in the lab, they're still beautiful. They're still art. We got a couple of people that actually wrote in and said they would listen to AI-generated versions of the show.
Well, how do they know they're not listening right now to that?
How do they know? We need to generate some more stills. How do we do this?
Oh, yeah, we do need to.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm running out
of a little project.
I'm running out of stills, but do we have the GPU power anywhere? Or do we spin up another one? I don't know. You tell me. I do not know. We also got a bunch of boosts that either had no message or they were streaming sats. So we don't cover all of them, so that way we can keep this tight enough. But I do just want to do a couple of shout-outs. 250 sats from Tepulus, 500 sats from Code Michael, and 100 sats from Now Science News. Thank you to them. Thank you to everyone who boosted in, even if you didn't make it on the show, and of course, to all the ones who do make it on the show. If you'd like to participate in the grand experiment, you can get a new podcast app at newpodcastapps.com. We're building a network of people that are armed with sats, and we're starting to see a couple of open source projects come on, but we're also seeing a lot of podcasters come online. And I think this is a critical moment in podcasting. I think we are witnessing Wes, what was the one you were listening to recently where they had just these horrible dynamic inserted ads?
Oh gosh, yeah. I think it was the Conan O'Brien podcast. Yep. And it was one of those gambling, platform sports betting kind of things. And then after the ad, it was this super cut and slightly tightened and sped up.
Sped up.
Yeah, like 1.25x speed without me doing it in the app, but just of the ad and them doing all the disclaimers state by state for the different hotlines if you have a gambling problem, which that's good. People should get help. But and it was a solid 30 seconds. And I was like, I just was trying to listen to the podcast. I don't mind a little ad because most of his ads are kind of like, they're funny and they're like organic. This was just garbage.
Well, what they do is, so when revenue dips, and this is going to be happening more and more, is you just turn to the dynamic ads. It's kind of like monetizing on YouTube. And I just not the direction to go. And somehow they made them worse than radio ads, which is what's remarkable. Is, like, you would never have thought it was going to happen in podcasting, and I hate to see this happening. And I feel like we're building an alternative with podcasting 2.0 and the value for value stuff. So I'm hoping that this is an idea that spreads. And if you'd like to participate, newpodcastapps.com. If you're in the States and you want to grab some sats really easy, the Cash App and the Strike app make that super easy to do. The Cash App just recently added Lightning support, so there's a major vendor on Lightning now.
Hey, yo.
And then if you're outside the States, Blue Wallet and RoboSats and others are great ways to go. Now, we're running kind of long, so we're going to skip the picks this week. So why don't we mention that we will be live next week. We are doing our Fedora 37 review. We'd love to have you join us for that. That's at jupiter.tube. We usually kick off the stream a little bit before noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern over there. So get your browser fired up or your VLC client or your MPV. Head over to jupiter.tube and help us peer out the stream.
See you next week. Same bat time, same bat station.
We need like a phrase for that. Like when you're helping seed the stream, is that it?
Yeah.
Because it's all peer-to-peer.
It is all peer-to-peer.
And so it lets us run our own YouTube. Basically.
Yeah, right? We're not paying our big CDN bills.
Yep, and it's part of the Federation. It's a powerful set of tooling. I love it. Self-hosted value for value. Self-hosted live streaming. Self-hosted live interaction.
Next
just all of it.
Self-hosted Twitter?
Self-hosted Mastodon, I don't know. Maybe. Let us know what you think. Thank you so much for tuning this week's episode of the Unplugged program. Links to what we talked about today at linuxunplugged.com/what? 484, 384? You'll figure it out. Figure it out. See you next week. I have a question, and I am very afraid of what the answer is going to be, but I think I know what it's going to be.
Uh-oh.
I think my car has a blown head gasket. Not my car, but my wife's car has a blown head gasket.
Uh-oh.
Typically, if you think that it does, it probably does.
Here's the symptoms. I'm seeing we not always, but we've had to refill the coolant a couple of times, but there's no dripping.
Oh.
And the catalytic converter is clogged up.
Oh.
Oh, God.
I did a OB2 port scan, and I noticed that bank 1 is running rich, and it's adding fuel, especially at low idles. It's adding like 16% fuel, and then on the freeway, it's doing like 2%. And I'm thinking like, okay, so coolant's gone. Not rapid coolant, but a little bit of coolant.
Uh-huh.
Thinking running rich, thinking clogged cat.
Does it report like compression on each cylinder as well? Do you have that kind of detail?
I didn't see that.
Look for it. I think that's a good metric.
That would be a key indicator, huh? I think I'm going to bring it in and find out.
I like our impromptu car talk segment here.
Yeah, little car talk. Little Linux car talk. Boom, boom, boom. Before cars are computers. Ba, 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 ba.
Brent's Garage.
Oh, cars are computers.
Yeah, especially this one, let me tell you.
Chris, did you try a last minute upgrade? See if that fixes it?
Right?